Alright, me. It is early June, and I just finished reading Legally Blonde. I don't remember who it's by, but this is the musical version of Legally Blonde. It's a very, very fun musical, both to just read, but then also to watch. It's absolutely fantastic in so many ways. This is the second time I've done it because when it was either 16 or 17 at the time that I ran Spotlight for a local production of Legally Blonde, which is why I have this script. So I guess, this is the first time I've read it since then. Even though it is a very, very great musical, it also feels a little weird because my main memory that comes back from doing this show is not the fun that I had doing it, but rather because I've had this very weird experience of heartbreak and destruction that seemed to very much mirror Legally Blonde. It was very weird. But yeah, but the musical itself is really, really nice. Obviously the key point of it is you should be willing to do things your own way, right? To an extent, right? You have Elle Woods, who is very much in all stereotype this Malibu blonde girl who's in the early 2000s would have been featured on things like, The Girls Gone Wild or whatever, right? And that's the way it's very much set up. And then she makes this decision to go to Harvard Law School at the very last second because her now ex-boyfriend, Warner, is going there, right? And oddly enough, Legally Blonde ties into Savage Inequalities, right, by Jonathan Kozol, because one of the big things that Jonathan Kozol points out is that, right, the students that we have and the people that we have, they're born into a set of circumstances that heavily define what they're going to be doing, right? And the way that a society looks at them heavily influences that. And Elle Woods is a perfect example of this sort of quality, except for, I think a very easily imaginable picture for people who have wealth, right? Because Elle is born into the society in which it is expected of her where she's going to go to college, yes, but her degree is not to do that degree. Her degree is that she can marry someone and then never use that degree ever, right? That's the point of what her society expects of women. But what we see is in a year's worth of time, really in 6 months worth of time, she's able to go from that set of expectations to then being an entrant into Harvard Law School, right? And it's because finally, eventually, right, the decision was made for her to go and do that thing, right? And because she had money and she had access to things, right, and she had someone that was willing to help her the entire way, she was able to achieve that very, very quickly, right? The set of circumstances in which we were born in will a lot of times define and mold what we think of ourselves and how we attribute ourselves, especially to education, right? But what we see is if given the opportunity, given the time, and given the effort, and given the money, well, then we can absolutely change that and strive to what is considered to be the highest level of education in many ways. So it's a weird connection, but I think it's a very important one, right? It also, I think, just falls in line with this constant idea of willingness to do things your own way, right? Because it is very easy to fall into this trap of, well, these people act this way, and therefore we all need to act this way because these are the best people, and therefore the way that they're doing it is always the best, right? What we see throughout Elwood's case is that she has this underlying connection that immediately gives her trust, right? And she's going to do everything in her power to keep that trust, right? Is it portrayed in a very silly way? Absolutely it is, right? And this concept of sorority girls and their unwavering ability to always trust each other. Having been around some presidents of sororities and vice presidents of sororities, that is certainly not always the case, but right, it's a good imagination of what it could be. And right, it's that trust that then puts her and only her in this position to win this case, right? It's also a thing of like, one of the things that we often forget about, especially when it comes to like higher end things or like what we consider like top class and whatnot, is our background of experiences really do matter, right? And having a diverse group of people really does matter, right? Once again, the thing that wins this case and proves that, what's her face? That Brooke is not guilty, is because we have this one character in Elle who knows exactly the process of a perm, right? And is able to prove an alibi false because she knows this process, right? Because what we see is the key witness, the one that is claiming that she saw Brooke standing over the body covered in blood, is the fact that she went out and got a perm and then went and showered in the same day. Well, of course you can't do that, right? But the only person who knows that is Elle, right? If we had stuck to this very baseline of like, we need to be serious all the time, groups and people and the way of thinking, right? That is something that would have been caught, right? And it's only because of our diverse backgrounds and diverse experiences that we were able to find the right person guilty, right? And it's just one of those things, right, where like if we only ever want to teach and promote the same idealism for everyone, right, and we immediately separate everyone based on where they've come from and what they've experienced, well, what you're going to end up happening, right, is you're going to have a whole bunch of Callahans all doing law, which is the worst thing possible, because that is a whole bunch of Callahans doing law is effectively watching Suits. It's very fun when you're not involved in it, but if you had to be involved in it, it would be the worst experience in the world, right? Versus, right, having this really diverse group of people with diverse backgrounds and getting a whole bunch of different perspectives, but also a bunch of different knowledge from places that you normally wouldn't get it from, right? So yeah, right? Legally Blonde is such a fantastic show in that sense, right? It also, I think, does an important step, which is, I think, the breaking and the showing that the waves that we, expect things like women empowerment and feminism to go is not always the best way, right? I don't remember which wave of feminism it is, but right, it's I think either the second or third, maybe, but it was all about that in order for women to be accepted into the world of business and into the world of things like that were traditionally male dominated, they had to act like men and they had to be very conservative and the way they acted and the way they dressed, because otherwise they weren't going to be taken seriously. And right, we have Vivian, who kind of acts that out. We have what's her name? I don't know, but it's the third female lawyer's name that's on this case, who is kind of acting that out, but it is generally portrayed as being fairly conservative in the way that she dresses, in the way that she acts, but is also what would, in our terms and now, be considered a liberal snowflake, right? And then you have Elle, who is this person who's wildly accepting of herself, but is also wildly accepting of her sexuality and her willingness to be a woman, right? Because even at the very end of this, right, she's very open about her own, personal, or about helping other people, right, in terms of their sexual desires and romantic desires and whatnot, right? But then we also see this get betrayed because of this older wave of thinking in which, in order to be taken seriously, you have to act like a man, which Callahan then exploits, and then Warner also exploits, right? Because it's just one of these concepts in which most men, when they see women in the workplace, especially in typically male-dominated fields, very rarely does it ever get treated seriously, right? Which is an incredibly unfortunate thing, right? It is filled with concepts that men who work in generally male-dominated fields that are then working with women or have women above them in power structure often tend to view that these are women that have supped their way to the top in some way, or have exploited their sexuality in some way, or that they're not deserving of those positions, right? Which is incredibly unfair. It's so unfair, right? And you see Callahan and you see Warner, and they give this exact thing, right? And it is perhaps the most unfortunate thing about the way that we view work and workplaces and things, right? But yeah, right. That is Legally Blonde. Very, very good. Very, 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 very good. It's a lot of fun. There are certain things that do not really hold up, but overall, fantastic.